Stars Beyond the Monolith, Mono o Koerasing. Chapter 9, The Covenant of Crystal and Steel. Kết晶と鋼の盟約, the storm basin, had gone quiet in the specific, settled way of a place that had finished saying what it needed to say. 3 weeks had passed since the dragon's calming. 3 weeks of the Veylin Order's cautious trust deepening into something that resembled, more each day, genuine partnership. Cassandra had spent most of those weeks moving between the Parker's Bridge and the basin's crystal forests, building the kind of working relationship between two civilizations that no translation array alone could have produced. "They've agreed to a joint survey," she reported to the bridge, her voice carrying the specific satisfaction of someone watching patient work finally bear fruit. "Full cooperation. Their crystal navigators have techniques for reading resonance patterns that our instruments can't replicate alone. Combined, we'll see things neither of us could see separately." Mary looked at her granddaughter with the quiet approval she rarely needed to voice directly. "Then let's see what two civilizations can find together," she said. The crystal map. The survey began at the basin's edge, where Cassandra's cyber viper hovered in careful coordination with a cluster of Veylin crystal navigators, tall, luminous figures whose ceremonial instruments hummed in frequencies that the frame's sensors had to be specifically calibrated to receive. "Their resonance technique is remarkable," Cassandra said, working through the combined data stream with growing fascination. "They're not measuring energy the way we measure it. They're listening to it. There's a whole register of information here our instruments were filtering out as noise." The picture that emerged, layer by careful layer, was larger than anything the family had yet mapped on this world. Crystal lattice zones. Not isolated formations, but a planet-wide network. Energy-reactive stone structures connected through underground channels that linked directly to the monolith system Princess had first identified months earlier. Ancient signal pathways embedded so deeply into the world's geography that they had become, over time, indistinguishable from geology itself. "These aren't weapons," Princess confirmed. From her own analysis aboard the Parker, the Oracle's deep scan data confirming what Cassandra's fieldwork was already suggesting. "They're stabilizers. The entire network functions like planetary infrastructure, communication routing, environmental synchronization, the kind of systemic regulation that keeps a world's natural cycles balanced." Amira, reviewing the engineering schematics, with her characteristic bluntness, summarized it more simply. "It's the planet's old operating system," she said, "and it's been running this whole time without anyone noticing, because nobody built a control panel for it. They just built the planet around it." The Migration, the dragons, came in numbers the family had not yet witnessed. Princess flagged the pattern first. Atmospheric readings, shifting across the entire northern hemisphere in coordinated waves, the specific, signature, she had learned to associate with the great creature from the storm basin, now multiplying across dozens of simultaneous flight corridors. "Dragon migration season," she reported. "This is a planetary scale event. The Veylin records describe it happening on a cycle measured in years, not days." "Are they a threat?" Amira asked, though her tone suggested she already suspected the answer. "No," Cassandra said immediately. "I've been studying their behavior since the basin encounter. They're not predators reacting to prey or competitors reacting to threat. They're responding to something in the crystal lattice itself, moving along the same energy pathways the lattice uses, in patterns that correlate precisely with the network's resonance cycles." Below them, across the planet's surface, entire sky corridors shifted in slow, coordinated flows. Dozens of the enormous creatures moving together with the unhurried, instinctive grace of something that had been doing this since long before any civilization had existed to watch it. The Veylin Order guided their own people through careful evacuation routes, not from danger, Cassandra understood, but from the simple physical reality of sharing airspace with creatures the size of small mountains. Civilian safety, not crisis management. The Mecha held position, observing rather than engaging, exactly as the Veylin's own tradition suggested was correct. "They're not just migrating," Cassandra said, watching the patterns resolve fully. "They're regulating. Their movement redistributes energy across the crystal lattice, the same way blood circulation redistributes resources through a body. The dragons are part of how this planet stays balanced." Mary absorbed, this with the specifics quiet she gave to discoveries that reshaped her understanding of a place. "Then they were never the threat," she said. "They were always part of the solution." The first joint operation. The instability arrived 3 days into the migration. A single crystal lattice zone, deep in the basin's eastern reach, losing its resonance coherence in a way that Cassandra's instruments flagged as significant before anyone fully understood what it meant. "Terrain distortion across a 6-kilometer radius," Princess reported. "Signal interference is already affecting Veylin communication relays. If this spreads, we could see navigation desync across the entire region, both for them and for us." Mary did not hesitate. "Full coordinated response," she said. "This is what we've been building toward. Let's see if two systems can work as one." It was, in the operation that followed, exactly that. The Aegis. Mary Parker. Mary positioned the Aegis above the destabilizing zone's evacuation corridors, her barriers extending not to repel an enemy, but to create safe passage. The specific protective architecture that had always been her contribution, now applied to a crisis with no hostile party at all. The vanguard. Amin Parker. Amin moved through the affected terrain, clearing paths through the distortion's most severe effects. Fissures opening unpredictably in ground that had been stable an hour before. The specific, quiet competence that required no explanation because it had never needed one. The cyber viper, Cassandra Brown. Cassandra worked the heart of the problem itself, her frame's systems reaching into the crystal lattice's disrupted harmonics, attempting to read the specific frequency the zone had lost and feed a corrective signal back through the network. The Veylin order. Alongside her, the knights performed their own resonance stabilization ritual, crystal armor pulsing in patterns that Cassandra's instruments now understood well enough to synchronize with, directly, two completely different technologies, working toward the exact same outcome, from two completely different traditions. The Schwartz systems. On the ground, support teams and Schwartz units moved through the affected population centers, the same personal survival technology that had carried Cassandra's team through the storm trial path, now protecting civilians until the zone's instability passed. Synchronizing, Cassandra said, holding the combined frequency steady as the Veylin ritual reached its peak. Knights, hold the pattern. I'm feeding the corrective signal now. The crystal lattice zone's resonance, which had been fracturing into chaotic noise, began instead to settle back into its original coherent rhythm. No combat, no villain. Just two civilizations working together, solving a problem that belonged to the world they shared, the deeper pattern. It was in the operation's aftermath, reviewing the full data set with the patient thoroughness that had become her defining quality, that Cassandra found something that troubled her, in a way the zone's instability alone had not. The crystal lattice zones aren't independent, she said, to the bridge, to her family, working through the connections with growing concentration. They're interconnected. A single, planetary, synchronization, network, not dozens of separate ones. And the network is losing timing consistency, not in one zone. Across all of them, gradually, in a pattern I can now trace back at least 6 months. 6 months, Mary said. Since before we arrived. Since before we arrived, Cassandra confirmed. This isn't something we caused, but I don't think it's something that's going to resolve on its own either. She pulled the full pattern onto the main display. The planet's entire crystal lattice network, rendered as a web of interconnected light, with specific nodes pulsing at intervals that no longer quite match their neighbors. I'm calling it an interference pattern, she said carefully. Unknown source layer. I want to be precise about what I'm not saying. This isn't a villain, it's not a consciousness, and it's not a creature making a decision. It reads as a low-level systemic distortion affecting the network's synchronization cycles, the kind of thing that might develop in any sufficiently complex system over enough time. Amin, who had been listening with his characteristic silence, spoke. But it's getting worse, he said. Not a question. It's getting worse, Cassandra confirmed. The night revelation. The Veylin elders received the family's findings, with the specific, grave attention of people hearing a confirmation of something their oldest traditions had always half expected. Our records describe the crystal lattice as the bones of the world, the eldest among them explained, her words carried through Cassandra's translation array with the particular weight of inherited knowledge. Built by whom, even our oldest stories do not say, to hold the planet's balance steady. The dragons were always meant to walk its pathways. Together, lattice and creature, they were built to last forever. What happens if the lattice loses synchronization completely? Cassandra asked. The elder considered this carefully. Our stories do not describe an ending, she said. They describe a correction. When the world's balance drifts too far, the old stories say, the world finds its own way back to center, sometimes gently, sometimes... She paused, choosing her words with evident care. Sometimes not gently. Not an apocalypse, Princess clarified, listening through the relay. A natural cycle correction, severe, possibly, but not an ending. That is our understanding, the elder said, though our understanding has never before included guests from beyond the sky asking such careful questions about it. The silent sky signal. Back aboard the Parker that evening, a new anomaly resolved on the deep scan arrays. Something Princess flagged the moment its pattern crossed her threshold for significance. A repeating low-frequency pulse, she reported, originating from structural layers deeper than the crystal lattice we've been mapping. It's too structured to be ordinary geology, too consistent to be random. Cassandra studied it with the focused, careful attention that had defined her entire approach since the lesson of the empty colony. Slower now, more willing to test her conclusions before committing to them. This isn't random, she said finally. It's a system losing synchronization stability, the same pattern we found in the crystal lattice, but deeper, older, and it's been pulsing at this frequency for... She checked the data again. I can't fully date it yet, but it's significant. Mary did not respond immediately. She stood at the bridge's central display, looking at the pulse's pattern with the specific, weighing stillness that had always preceded her most important decisions. Not alarm, not yet, but the genuine attention a thing required when its true shape had not yet been fully seen. Amin remained silent beside her, looking at the planet through the view screen. The world that had welcomed them, that had trusted them, that was now revealing, layer by careful layer, Depths none of them had been prepared to find. Amira, working through her own engineering analysis at the adjacent station, broke the silence with the dry, deflecting humour that had become, over many missions, her particular way of carrying weight without letting it show too plainly. "Great," she said. "The planet's timing is starting to drift." Nobody laughed, but nobody told her to stop either, because beneath the humour was the same recognition everyone on the bridge was quietly reaching at the same moment. The layers of one world. That night, the full shape of what they had found settled across the ship in the Pacific, considering quiet that always followed a discovery too large to process in a single sitting. In orbit, the Parker continued its patient watch, its sensors now extended toward depths of the planet's structure that no previous mission had thought to examine. In the mid-air corridors, the Mecha observed the dragon migration continuing its great ancient circuits, though Princess noted, watching the patterns with her practiced eye, that the coordination was subtly less precise than it had been 3 weeks earlier. Small, easy to miss, but present. On the surface, the Veylin Order maintained their crystal systems, with the same careful devotion they had brought to the task for longer than their own histories could fully trace. Knights tending machinery built by hands none of them could name, for a purpose their older stories only partially remembered. And deep below all of it, deeper than the lattice, deeper than the guardians the family had encountered on the first rescued world, something ancient continued its slow, inconsistent pulse. Not threatening, not yet understood, but undeniably, unmistakably, losing the rhythm it had once kept without fail. Cassandra stood at the observation deck long after the others had retired, looking down at the planet that had become, in the months since their arrival, something closer to a second home than a mission site. She thought about the Elder's words. Our stories do not describe an ending. They describe a correction. She thought about 14 monoliths, scattered across a network of worlds the family had only begun to chart. She thought about the specific, patient way her grandmother had taught her to sit with uncertainty rather than rushing past it. The lesson of the empty colony, still settling into something she trusted more each time she returned to it. "Whatever this is," she said quietly, to the planet below, to the dark beyond it, to the question she did not yet have an answer for, "we're going to understand it, properly, this time." The pulse continued, deep beneath the surface, its rhythm drifting further from coherence with each passing hour. Somewhere in that drift, Cassandra understood, was the next chapter of everything this family had been built across impossible centuries to face. She did not yet know what it would ask of them, but for the first time since the lesson that had humbled her, she found that not knowing felt less like fear and more like the beginning of understanding. End of chapter 9. The Covenant of Crystal and Steel Estrellas. Más allá del monolito. Monorisio Guerreru Sing. Capítulo 9. El Pacto de Cristal y Acero. D9 Keshinto Kangno Meng, Yuela Cuenca de Tormentas, se había quedado tranquila de la manera específica y asentada de un lugar que había terminado de decir lo que necesitaba decir. Habían pasado 3 semanas desde la calma del dragón, 3 semanas en las que la confianza cautelosa de la Orden Veylin se profundizaba cada día más en algo que se parecía a una verdadera asociación. Cassandra había pasado la mayor parte de esas semanas moviéndose entre el puente del Parker y los bosques de cristal de la cuenca. Han acordado un sondeo conjunto, reportó al puente, su voz llevando la satisfacción específica de alguien viendo finalmente dar fruto a un trabajo paciente. Cooperación completa. Sus navegantes de cristal tienen técnicas para leer patrones de resonancia que nuestros instrumentos no pueden replicar solos. Mary miró a su nieta con la aprobación silenciosa que rara vez necesitaba expresar directamente. Entonces veamos que pueden encontrar juntas 2 civilizaciones, dijo. El mapa de cristal el sondeo comenzó en el borde de la cuenca, donde el Cyberviper de Cassandra flotaba en cuidadosa coordinación con un grupo de navegantes de cristal Veylin. Su técnica de resonancia es notable, dijo Cassandra, trabajando a través del flujo de datos, combinado con creciente fascinación. No están midiendo la energía como nosotros la medimos, la están escuchando. La imagen que emergió, capa por cuidadosa capa, era más grande que cualquier cosa que la familia hubiera mapeado todavía en este mundo. Zonas de retícula de cristal. No formaciones aisladas, sino una red planetaria. Estructuras de piedra reactivas a la energía, conectadas a través de canales subterráneos que se vinculaban directamente al sistema del monolito. Esto no son armas, confirmó Princess. Son estabilizadores. Toda la red funciona como infraestructura planetaria. Amira, revisando los esquemas de ingeniería con su característica franqueza, lo resumió más simplemente. Es el viejo sistema operativo del planeta, Dio, y ha estado funcionando todo este tiempo sin que nadie lo notara, porque nadie construyó un panel de control para él. Simplemente construyeron el planeta a su alrededor. La migración. Los dragones llegaron en números que la familia todavía no había sido testigo. Temporada de migración de dragones, reportó Princess. Este es un evento de escala planetaria. ¿Son una amenaza?, preguntó Amira, aunque su tono sugería que ya sospechaba la respuesta. No, dijo Cassandra, inmediatamente. Están respondiendo a algo en la retícula de cristal misma. Abajo de ellos, a través de la superficie del planeta, corredores enteros del cielo cambiaban en flujos lentos y coordinados. No solo están migrando, dijo Cassandra, observando los patrones resolverse completamente. Están regulando. Los dragones son parte de cómo este planeta se mantiene equilibrado. Mary absorbió esto con la quietud específica que daba a los descubrimientos que remodelaban su comprensión de un lugar. Entonces, nunca fueron la amenaza, dijo. Siempre fueron parte de la solución. La primera operación conjunta, la inestabilidad, llegó 3 días después de comenzar la migración, una sola, zona de retícula de cristal, en lo profundo del alcance oriental de la cuenca, perdiendo su coherencia de resonancia. Distorsión de terreno en un radio de 6 kilómetros, reportó Princess. Mary no dudó. Respuesta coordinada completa, dijo. Esto es para lo que hemos estado construyendo. Veamos si 2 sistemas pueden trabajar como uno. El Aegis. Mary Parker. Mary posicionó al Aegis sobre los corredores de evacuación de la zona desestabilizada. El Vanguard. Amin Parker. Amin se movió a través del terreno afectado, despejando caminos. El Cyber Viper. Cassandra Brown. Cassandra trabajó el corazón mismo del problema, los sistemas de su frame, alcanzando los armónicos perturbados de la retícula de cristal. La Orden Veylin. Junto a ella, los caballeros realizaron su propio ritual de estabilización de resonancia. Los sistemas Schwartz. En el suelo, los equipos de apoyo en unidades Schwartz se movieron a través de los centros de población afectados. Sincronizando, dijo Cassandra, manteniendo estable la frecuencia combinada. Caballeros, mantengan el patrón. Estoy alimentando la señal correctiva ahora. La resonancia de la zona de retícula de cristal, que se había estado fracturando en ruido caótico, comenzó en su lugar a asentarse de vuelta en su ritmo coherente original. Sin combate, sin villano, solo 2 civilizaciones trabajando juntas, resolviendo un problema que pertenecía al mundo que compartían, el patrón más profundo. Las zonas de retícula de cristal no son independientes, dijo, al puente, a su familia. Están interconectadas, una sola red de sincronización planetaria. Y la red está perdiendo consistencia de tiempo. No en una zona. A través de todas ellas, gradualmente, en un patrón que ahora puedo rastrear hasta hace al menos 6 meses. 6 meses, dijo Mary, desde antes de que llegáramos. Desde antes de que llegáramos, confirmó Cassandra. Esto no es algo que causamos, pero tampoco creo que sea algo que se resolverá solo. Lo estoy llamando un patrón de interferencia, dijo, cuidadosamente. Capa de fuente desconocida. Quiero ser precisa sobre lo que no estoy diciendo. Esto no es un villano, no es una conciencia, y no es una criatura tomando una decisión. Amin, que había estado escuchando con su característico silencio, habló. Pero está empeorando, dijo. No una pregunta. Está empeorando, confirmó Cassandra. La revelación del caballero. Nuestros registros describen la retícula de cristal como los huesos del mundo, explicó la mayor entre ellos. Construida. ¿Por quién? Ni siquiera nuestras historias más antiguas lo dicen. Para mantener firme el equilibrio del planeta. ¿Qué pasa si la retícula pierde la sincronización completamente? Preguntó Cassandra. La anciana lo consideró cuidadosamente. Nuestras historias no describen un final, dijo. Describen una corrección. Cuando el equilibrio del mundo se desvía demasiado, dejan las feas historias el mundo encuentra su propio camino de vuelta al centro. A veces suavemente. A veces... Hizo una pausa, eligiendo sus palabras con evidente cuidado. A veces no suavemente. No un apocalipsis, clarificó Princess, escuchando a través del relevo. Una corrección de ciclo natural. Severa, posiblemente. Pero no un final. La señal silenciosa del cielo. De vuelta a bordo del Parker esa noche, una nueva anomalía se resolvió en los arrays de escaneo profundo. Un pulso de baja frecuencia repetitivo, reportó Princess, originándose desde capas estructurales más profundas que la retícula de cristal que hemos estado mapeando. Cassandra estudió esto con la atención enfocada y cuidadosa que había definido todo su enfoque desde la lección de la colonia Bachia. Esto no es aleatorio, dijo finalmente. Es un sistema perdiendo estabilidad de sincronización. El mismo patrón que encontramos en la retícula de cristal, pero más profundo, más antiguo. Mary no respondió inmediatamente. Eamon permaneció silencioso a su lado, mirando el planeta a través de la pantalla. El mundo que los había recibido, que había confiado en ellos, que ahora estaba revelando, capa por cuidadosa capa, profundidades para las que ninguno de ellos había estado preparado. Amiraf, trabajando a través de su propio análisis de ingeniería en la estación adyacente, Rompió el silencio con el humo seco y desviado que se había vuelto, a través de muchas misiones, su manera particular de cargar peso sin dejarlo mostrar demasiado claramente. Genial, dijo. El tiempo del planeta está empezando a desviarse. Nadie se rió, pero nadie le dijo que se detuviera. Tampoco, porque debajo del humor estaba el mismo reconocimiento que todos en el puente estaban alcanzando silenciosamente en el mismo momento. Las capas de un mundo. Esa noche, la forma completa de lo que habían encontrado se asentó a través de la nave, en la quietud específica y reflexiva, que siempre seguía a un descubrimiento demasiado grande para procesar de una sola vez. En órbita, el Parker continuó su vigilancia paciente. En los corredores aéreos, los Mecha observaron la migración de dragones, continuando sus grandes y antiguos circuitos. Aunque Princess notó, observando los patrones con su ojo experto, que la coordinación era sutilmente menos precisa de lo que había sido 3 semanas antes. En la superficie, la Orden Veylin mantuvo sus sistemas de cristal con la misma devoción cuidadosa. Y profundo debajo de todo eso, más profundo que la retícula, más profundo que los guardianes que la familia había encontrado en el primer mundo rescatado, algo antiguo continuaba su pulso lento e inconsistente. Cassandra permaneció en la cubierta de observación mucho después de que los demás se retiraran, mirando hacia abajo al planeta que se había convertido, en los meses desde su llegada, en algo más cercano a un segundo hogar que a un sitio de misión. Pensó en las palabras de la anciana. Nuestras historias no describen un final, describen una corrección. Pensó en 14 monolitos, esparcidos a través de una red de mundos que la familia apenas había comenzado a cartografiar. Sea lo que sea esto, dijo, en voz baja, al planeta abajo, a la oscuridad más allá de él. Lo vamos a entender, correctamente, esta vez. El pulso continuó, profundo bajo la superficie, su ritmo desviándose más de la coherencia con cada hora que pasaba. En algún lugar en esa deriva, Cassandra entendió, estaba el próximo capítulo de todo para lo que esta familia había sido construida a través de siglos imposibles para enfrentar. Todavía no sabía qué les pediría, pero por primera vez, desde la lección que la había humillado, descubrió que no saber se sentía menos como miedo y más como el comienzo de la comprensión. Fin del capítulo 9. El pacto de cristal y acero.